Tonight, you're about to meet members of the secretive group known as the Boogaloo Bois, born out of anti-government conspiracy theories. But as members of the alt-right militia group show up armed to protest nationwide, critics say there's cause for concern. ABC's Matt Gutman has the story.
Those Aloha shirts, they're not for a luau. Igloo masks, but packing heat.
Ready to go?
The leader of this group goes by the name Shifty. It's not his real name, but a nickname he gave himself. And Shifty is a self-proclaimed Boogaloo Boy. Today, Shifty is meeting up with about a dozen other Boogaloo Boys to attend this Black Lives Matter protest in Austin, Texas. Serving, he says, as a sort of armed protection to keep protesters safe from violence by the police. His group is armed and ready with those assault rifles, and in their minds, they say they're guarding against what they describe as government intrusion. Boogaloos don't often speak to the media, but Shifty agreed to an interview with me via speakerphone just before the protest. So, what's with the Hawaiian shirts? Speaking of your kit.
We needed something to identify ourselves with.
I know you're not trying to seem menacing with the Hawaiian shirts and the igloo patches, but, you know, an AR-style rifle for many people is menacing.
People can feel how they want, but the Constitution protects our rights to do that. Everybody who does such in my group is trained and efficient with their weapons.
But Shifty and his fellow Boogaloos are not part of Black Lives Matter. They're part of a very different and much more secretive movement. They say they're anti-government, anti-establishment, pro-gun, pro-freedom. But their ideology is based on a notion of an impending Second American Civil War, which they call Civil War II Electric Boogaloo.
The phrase Boogaloo is referencing an old movie from 1984 called Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo. It was a breakdancing movie, had nothing to do with violence.
Now you might ask, what does a film about teens engaging in goofy breakdancing duels have anything to do with armed men, Hawaiian shirts, igloos, and a call for a civil war? Well, not much, actually.
The first reference to the Boogaloo meaning a future civil war started really in the recesses of the internet a few years back, but it crossed over into more mainstream social media platforms back in June of 2018. And since then, it's caught steam.
The word Boogaloo is a throwback to Afro-Latino dance and music made popular in the 60s on shows like American Bandstand. Despite the air of joviality, this movement that's co-opted its name has proven to be deadly serious.
They are an extremist group. Their rhetoric, their pedigree and everything is based on violence against peace officers and others that they disagree with.
In general, there are two broad camps of the Boogaloo. On the one hand, you've got white supremacists who view this civil war through a racial lens. And then you've got the more popular anti-government extremist version of the Boogaloo.
Some members have been accused of using the protest to act on Boogaloo's violent promise of inciting discord. In the last 3 months, several alleged members across the country have been charged with crimes. In Las Vegas, federal authorities say 3 alleged Boogaloo members were found possessing Molotov cocktails. They were arrested. They have since been charged with federal and state crimes, including a conspiracy to commit acts of terrorism. All 3 men have pled not guilty. And in Oakland, authorities say Air Force Sergeant Stephen Carrillo, a self-avowed Boogaloo member who had posted about the movement online, and Robert Justice Jr. drove this white van to the federal courthouse there, then shot and killed federal officer Patrick Underwood.
They came to Oakland to kill cops.
A week later, a witness spotted that van 70 miles away near Santa Cruz, California.
The witness observed what appeared to be ammunition, firearms, and bomb-making equipment in the van.
Sheriff deputies followed the van back to Carrillo's home. There, authorities say he ambushed officers, firing on them and throwing explosives. Another officer, Santa Cruz Sheriff Sergeant Damon Gutzweiler, was killed. 2 other officers were wounded. Carrillo went on the run in a white sedan, hitting yet another officer.
Somebody please come help!
Finally, a Good Samaritan tackles him, and police find what they say was a ghost gun. a homemade AR-style rifle he'd allegedly used, and as he was led away, Carrillo yells,
"This is what I came out to fight. I'm sick of these idiots."
Authorities say Carrillo scrawled "Boog" in blood on one of the vehicles he stole, and in his van, a bulletproof vest with a patch that tied him to the Boogaloo movement. Carrillo and Justice have been indicted and face charges of murder and attempted murder. Both have pled not guilty.
He was a lone wolf, and we do not condone violence or his actions. They were disgusting. He was not doing that in the defense of anybody's individual liberty.
Do you think it's a problem for the Boogaloo that people identify them with Stephen Carrillo's alleged attack on police?
Yes, it has been harmful to some things with us, yes.
So you've actually turned people away who've been advocating violence?
Absolutely.
We take the streets! Who are we? We take the streets!
But these Boogaloos claim they are non-violent, and they become a self-involved fixture in protests across the country. Never formally invited, but making their presence known.
One of the methods of recruiting is joining these protests and putting on a positive face that they are joining the people.
This is another Boogaloo member who wants to be called Trashman. He says he works construction in North Carolina by day. By night, he helps run one of the largest Boogaloo groups on Facebook.
I first became involved in it, or I guess more aware of it, through social media, through Facebook.
Trashman isn't carrying a gun because he says he's a non-violent Boogaloo.
What brought me into this ideology was the inclusion of others. It's not relegated to a certain class of people or a color of people or religion.
Sounds pretty middle of the road, but despite their claims of nonviolence, Homeland Security and the Department of Justice have labeled them as a violent extremist group.
The biggest misconception of the Boogaloo movement is that we're racist terrorists or extremists of any kind.
Facebook and the private messaging service Discord recently categorized the Boogaloos as extremists and purged their groups from the platforms.
Beginning of July, we were shut down on Facebook, my personal profile, as well as, from what I understand, hundreds, if not thousands of others were permanently deactivated on Facebook. It was a smack in the face, for sure.
All they did is fracture us into 1,000 more harder to find pieces, so it didn't slow us down one bit.
Even with the burgeoning attention, the Boogaloos remain very cloak and dagger. But Shifty feels they need to capitalize on the wave of unrest sweeping the country.
Why is it important for you to do this interview, Shifty?
Too many times we do not get a sit down in a relaxed environment to really express our views and really get the word out for what we're standing for, you know, in face, and let people know that this isn't just some internet meme or Facebook group with a bunch of guys sitting in their mother's basements typing on keyboards. This is a real thing.
While some, like Shifty and Trashman, say they toe the nonviolent line, they stand at the ready. The reality of the Boogaloo's anti-government ethos is always present.
So how far are you willing to go, even, let's say, at a protest like a BLM protest?
There's always the phrase, live to fight another day, but everybody who in our group is prepared to give the ultimate sacrifice in defense of liberty.
Our only recourse at this point is to be louder than everybody else. We need to make our voices very clear and very loud to both unify us and distance ourselves from those that would cause harm to people or present us in a bad light.
I think their ideology and everything tells you exactly what they're here for. Are they here to stay? I think time is going to tell. These groups don't go away. They may morph, change their name, change their style, change their membership, but the ideologies usually don't change.
For Nightline, I'm Matt Gutman in Los Angeles.